This is NC Spin, an unrehearsed discussion on issues of interest to North Carolinians. Now, here is your moderator, Tom Campbell.
Welcome. You've heard it read the spin the media and the politicians have put on the issues of the day. To get the correct spin on what's going on in North Carolina, let's introduce you to our panel of experts. They include Chris Fitzsimon from NC Policy Watch, former House Speaker Joe Mavretic, former Representative, now lobbyist Connie Wilson, and John Hood from the John Locke Foundation. As we head into this Thanksgiving holiday, we want to give thanks to all our viewers and panelists on NC Spin, and of course our sponsors too. We've got a good show for you this week that'll discuss the most talked about story, the big changes to the Affordable Care Act, Governor McCrory and the legislature's serious discussions about increasing teacher pay, and whether some public employees are receiving excessive pay and perks. And as usual, we'll ask our panelists to tell us something we don't know. Let's get started. The big newsmaker, as we said for the past several weeks, has been the implementation of the Affordable Care Act, commonly known as Obamacare. Republicans in Congress have tried to defund or repeal the law with no success. But sign-ups for the health insurance plans have been small. In North Carolina, we're told only 1,700 people signed up the first month, even as consumers with insurance have had their current plans canceled because they don't comply with the new act. Blue Cross, the number one insurer in our state, had to cancel more than 150,000 non-compliant plans. Overwhelmed by complaints from these current policyholders, President Obama yielded to pressure by urging insurance companies and state insurance commissioners to retain plans set to expire in December for another year. Blue Cross is working on it feverishly, and State Insurance Commissioner Wayne Goodwin says his department will expedite their request. Question one to all. There are a lot who are saying the president's turnaround effectively guts the Affordable Care Act, while others claim this was politically inspired because the one-year extension will take the heat off Democrats facing congressional election in November 2014. What's your reaction on what's taking place? Chris, we'll start with you.
Well, what's taking place is they made, I think, a serious error by not delaying the launch of the website. It wasn't ready. They should have known it wasn't ready. I think the president did bow to some pressure. I'm not sure it was the right thing to do politically, but I think it did ease some of the cries of people who thought their insurance policies were going to be canceled. I hope it also gives people a year to realize what the insurance policy they have. Some of these plans have very high deductibles that people didn't realize that their out-of-pocket costs may actually be more in a year that they use it than they would have under the new plan. So I think it's entirely too early to make a decision. And in a week or two or a month or two, if the website is working, and I think it will be, we'll be having a different conversation.
Joe, what's your take?
Well, I think the move in Washington tends to spread the blame. I mean, when you begin to involve the insurance companies in the several states, there are more people upon which to place some of the blame. One of the things that's intriguing to me as an older North Carolinian is that it took us 3 years and about 6 months from December the 7th, 1941 to win the war in Europe. It's taken this administration about the same time, and they can't come up with one website.
Connie, what's your take?
I don't think people are going to forget about this. Families are really worried about the cost of their health insurance here in North Carolina. The increases that they saw or the canceled policies, even though there's a one-year reprieve and people are at least breathing a sigh of relief that they're going to get a few months of relief, they know something's getting ready to happen. And what's not going to change is the fact that these new minimum standards on policies make policies extremely expensive, and they in no way have really reduced the cost of health care. In fact, in many ways, they've increased it. So this is going to be a continuing problem. People who've been used to affordable health insurance will have a hard time having that in the future.
John?
This is a disaster. It's a policy disaster. It's affected people adversely, and they know it. No more spin, no more promises, no more nonsense, no more propaganda. They've seen the numbers. They know it's bad. Most people who are currently affected by this know that it is adversely affecting them, not, well, if I only knew this better, I would understand it benefits them. They know it doesn't benefit them. They're angry about it. That's why the president had to do what he did. And I think if the president intended his year reprieve to alleviate the political pressure on Democrats in 2014, I think he's entirely mistaken. Chris may be right about this. I don't think the politics, it was a no-win scenario. The smartest thing that the Senate Democrats and the president could have done months ago was to actually accept one of the many proposals from the House to delay the plan. They should have done so. It would have been in their interest.
Joe Brad Wilson and Blue Cross announced this week that they are going to try to reinstate these plans. However, they also came out this week and said those same plans that they're reinstating are going to have premium increases between 16 and 24%. Were you surprised by these large increases, and why are they having to get them approved by the insurance commissioner?
Well, I don't know about the last part, but on the first part of your question, everyone in my family is going to have a premium increase. And the one that's going to be most affected is our youngest son, who's 25. And I've heard him say that he and his cohorts talk about, well, let's just pay the penalty to the IRS every year. The problem with that is that just paying the penalty doesn't absolve any of your assets. Somebody can come after them like a hospital, for example.
Connie, Wayne Goodwin says he's going to get these things expedited and get them approved so they can go into effect, and then he'll come back and look at the premium increases. Isn't this kind of like trying to chase the horse after, or close the barn door after the horse has escaped?
He doesn't really have much control over what's going on at the federal level. He's just trying to react as quickly as he can to get these policies in place. And so he's sped up the process, which I think is very good for the consumers of North Carolina. And then he's going to have to go back and do it the normal way next.
There simply isn't enough time to do any of the typical regulatory procedures, and so they're doing it post facto.
All right,
the problem is that the insurers are now going to be blamed by both sides.
All right, first month we had 1,700 people sign up. 15,000 learned they were eligible for subsidies. 7,400 learned they were eligible for Medicaid. What's your response to these numbers?
Well, I think what it says is that there are a whole lot of people, not only in North Carolina, but across the country, who really don't understand health insurance. Never have, never had to pay any attention to it. My employer takes care of this, and once a year he asks me some questions, and I keep on trucking. And now it's in the marketplace like how much is a bag of onions. It's a whole different ballgame.
All right, so we're in a situation where obviously Republicans don't like President Obama or Democrats. I don't think they've done a particularly good job in articulating their opposition to this plan at all. According to what I understand, an individual earning less than $43,000 a year, a family of four earning less than $89,000 a year is eligible for one of the subsidies. Chris, it looks to me like we're either expanding or creating new welfare or entitlement programs in North Carolina, or in this nation.
No, I think we're trying to figure out a way to let everybody have health care and spread the risk and make people who can afford to pay the cost of their care, and have a sliding scale so people can make it affordable in exchange for saying you can't be denied if you have a pre-existing condition.
Anybody disagree with that?
Yeah, I disagree.
Of course they do.
Well, I mean,
of course we do.
Blue Cross says that most of their current customers will not be eligible for subsidy. And they said about 40% would, and most of those people are not getting full subsidy. So while there is some cross-subsidization and redistribution of income going on, it isn't enough to blunt the effects of the premium increases for large swaths of the population.
Well, I disagree with that, but for a significant number of people it would.
And I'll say just down the road, that is a category, a budget category that's going to continue to explode because these health care costs are so high. To keep those subsidies in place is going to cost a heck of a lot more money.
You want to make a comment?
Well, I just think that if you have a huge social program nationwide and try to make it fit 50 states, you're in serious trouble.
You can watch NC Spin anytime you want. Just go to our website, ncspin.com, and click on the YouTube button on the right-hand side of the page. We post each week's show on Friday, so you can view us anytime you like. And while there, be sure to sign up for our free weekly email newsletter, Spin Cycle, and you can follow us on Twitter at NC Spin Tweets. 4 ways to keep the conversation going: ncspin.com, NC Spin on Facebook, at NC Spin Tweets, and Spin Cycle. We look forward to hearing from you. When we come back after these messages, we're going to talk about excessive pay and perks.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
Fishing isn't just part of my job, it's my life. It's a part of who I am and how I was raised in eastern North Carolina. It's how I put food on the table for my family. It's hard work, but I love what I do. There's something special about knowing that my long, hard days help feed friends, neighbors, and people in North Carolina. It might not be glamorous, but fishing is my life.
The cost of everything has gone up dramatically over the last 75 years. With one exception, keeping electricity affordable. That's the power of your co-op membership. Learn more at togetherwesave.com.
North Carolina's Touchstone Energy Cooperatives, looking out for you.
We now return to NC Spin.
The News and Observer has done a series of investigative reports on what public officials are being paid, and they've exposed a number of instances where college presidents, hospital execs, and other executives leading authorities, commissions, and institutions overseen by political appointees and are paid salaries and benefit packages that far exceed our governor, council of state, members, and even execs who manage considerably more people and larger budgets. The study examined pay and perks for 435,000 public employees from 12,000 state and local agencies. These local boards make the pay decisions, justifying them by citing comparable compensation for similar agencies. But in a time when public employees have gotten few pay hikes, the series concludes many of these pay packages that often amount to more than $300,000 a year are excessive. Connie, aside from the public employee pay equity issue, the NNO points out that these large compensation plans also factor into how much these execs receive in retirement benefits. And some are saying we ought to put a cap on pay and perks for public officials. The board members, on the other hand, talk about how hard it would be to replace these people. What's your take on all this?
Well, the bill that actually took a cap off the community college presidents was passed back in 2010 at the request of the Board of Trustees Association for all the community colleges across the state. And their complaint was this, that they had to compete in the marketplace to find the best presidents to run their school system because those community colleges are critical to the economic development of those communities. And they were finding that the cap was hurting them, so the cap was lifted. I lived in Charlotte for many years. Dr. Tony Zeiss is our president there at the community college. He has 70,000 students in his school system on 6 campuses. And he is continually approached to go to other community colleges. Their salaries are in line. Capping hurts the community colleges. It hurts communities.
So you support the local boards and their authority to be able to do it.
We keep
Anybody
saying,
disagree
we
with
keep
that?
saying we support local control, and that's what this is.
Well, I disagree violently, and the reason is, first of all, moving all of these the things that they get on the side into the salary base really bumps up the last 4 years of their retirement significantly.
And the retirement is based on the highest 4.
Right, for which they have paid nothing. That's the first thing. The second thing is, never forget that out there is a Navy captain who's running a $1 billion ship with 5,000 sailors aboard and several dozen aircraft 24/7 to go any place in the world for less money than the average community college president of North Carolina.
John, you were going to say you disagreed with that.
Well, I did. I think Joe makes a good point about the pension system. I think even if you can justify particular salaries for competitive reasons, the problem we've got here and the problem that the newspaper series illustrated is that the reported salary is not really the compensation. And furthermore, they're taking money that should not be included in a salary base because it's supposedly compensation for this or a vehicle allowance or whatever, and they're moving it around in order to manipulate the pension system. That is inappropriate, and it's not just costly to taxpayers, it's not transparent.
Chris, the question I want to ask is, why is it that our legislature and even local elected officials are holding the purse strings so tight on state employees and on city managers and so forth like that they control, and then willing to just give the purse strings to these appointed boards that they appoint and let them pay whatever they want to pay?
Well, that's a good question. I think there's several things here, and people have addressed pieces of it. Transparency is definitely the problem, one of the biggest problems. We ought to know, we ought to count it accurately, we ought to be upfront about what it is. That's the first thing. The second thing is some of these there are individuals in this series that have been identified that make salaries that don't make sense, that make more than people in other places that just don't fit right. Right. The cabinets. On the other hand, it is true that we're asking people and many times to compete with the private sector. I think there's a legitimate point of view. That's why you can't take one swath and put a cap and say this is it. But we have to have transparency. We have to take these things on an individual basis. Otherwise, if we're going to run government like a business, are we going to say we're going to pay a tenth of what a business would pay?
How do we justify this with state employees? And we're going to talk about teacher salaries in our next segment. How do we justify some of these salaries to these employees?
Tom, you can't. It's obscene. And it's obscene on the surface, and it's obscene no matter how far and how deep you dig.
So is anything going to happen as a result of this?
One of the things that would be worth doing when somebody says, well, we have to pay this amount to keep this person. You know what an appropriate answer is? Oh, okay, well then they're probably better off going somewhere else. I think we're due fine. Assuming that you have to compete every time so that you don't let anybody ever leave your institution.
I just want to say I'll run a community college for half of the $300,000 they pay.
But I would also say this. I know that community college presidents in large communities do a lot of fundraising. They're very important to economic development.
No question.
They're at the table, and I will say this. You can say, okay, you go ahead and leave, and we're going to take another year or two for somebody else to come back in. And then it costs you money. Lost opportunity.
Connie, when you were a legislator, would you have listened to that argument?
I would have. Yes, I would have, and I would have argued the same thing.
Really?
I would have.
Well, that's not the way they end up.
You know, I think it's interesting that you say these irreplaceable people so difficult to find in the marketplace. I will bet you that any community college in North Carolina, if the president was vanished within 24 hours inside the system, they could find an equal replacement.
Well, when we come back after these messages, we are going to talk about teachers' pay.
NC Spin will return after these messages.
It's true. Farming is different than it was 50 years ago. We know consumers have questions about how our food is grown today. North Carolina livestock farmers want you to know that they're using the most responsible and caring farming practices to feed our state.
ncanimalag.com.
The North Carolina Medical Society is committed to a healthier North Carolina. We feel as an organization representing over 14,000 physicians that we have a responsibility and an obligation to help our citizens become more healthy. And by doing this, we want to help educate them about ways in which they need to keep themselves healthy through good nutrition, exercise, and maintaining a healthy lifestyle. These ingredients will help not only individual citizens become and maintain a healthier outlook on their lives, but also help contribute to having a healthier state.
Where do you go when you need to know? A&C makes it easy for you to get the information you need to make well-informed public policy decisions. Our members are industry leaders who are ready to share their industry-specific insights with you. Want to hear both sides of the story? A&C members can tell you. Just use the A&C member directory as your guide or call us directly. A&C members have the knowledge, expertise, and perspective you need to create public policies that are good for North Carolina. We are ready for your call.
We now return to NC Spin.
Starting pay for a first-year teacher in North Carolina is less than $31,000 a year, about $4,000 below the national average. Teachers haven't had a pay increase in 4 years, even as teaching assistants have been cut and supplements for those with master's or doctorate degrees have been eliminated. Responding to increased cries for teacher pay increases, Governor Pat McCrory says he's looking at options for raising teacher pay. Including in those options, McCrory is considering might be paying more for teachers in high-demand fields like math and science, performance pay increases, higher starting salaries to induce young teachers to stay on the job, as well as across-the-board pay hikes. The legislature and governor have repeatedly said they want to pay teachers more, but huge Medicaid cost overruns took all the available funds. Joe, Governor McCrory and the legislative leaders say they're really serious about this teacher pay issue. Is this because state revenues are better so far this year, or because 2014 is an election year and they want to try to appease these teachers?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both, but what they're going to have to come up with is a little bit less than $500 million to do all the things that everybody's saying they need to do. That's the first thing. The second thing is that what the governor ought to do is bring every educator in North Carolina from pre-K all the way through the universities and sit them in Keenan Stadium and say, listen, education is the biggest business in North Carolina. Your business is below average. Do something about it. As you sow, so shall ye reap.
Interesting. Chris, of the options that we listed, what do you think McCrory is going to favor, and what do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think there'll be some performance pay. I don't know, but I would guess some performance pay piece. I think there'll be some across the board piece. But as Joe, it may be $400 million, it may be $500 million. Remember, this coming fiscal year, they'll be passing a budget where the tax cut will cost us $450 million more dollars. So if you're looking at $400 or $500 million, you're starting off looking for $1 billion.
John, let's go to this idea of paying teachers, entry-level teachers, more money than what we are currently paying them. Number one, what do you think of that concept? Will it hold them in the classroom? And secondly, how's that going to be responded to by other teachers?
You know, we've had some contentious debates in North Carolina in recent years, but this is an area where now for several years there's been a lot of cross-ideological agreement. With researchers on the left side of the spectrum, researchers at Duke University, researchers at my own organization have all been collaborating and comparing notes, and they all believe that North Carolina needs to change its salary schedule so that the starting salaries are higher. I think that is a likely component of whatever happens.
Connie, 2014 is going to be an election year. There's a lot of buzz about the fact that teachers ain't happy and that they may retaliate against incumbents. What impact will a 2% pay increase or some of these other things have so far as making them happier?
I think it will slightly dampen, their opposition. I think there's a lot of frustration out there. I think what you're going to see from the legislature that they'll revisit the master's degree issue where they're going to continue having increased salary for that. But that crowd is really fired up right now, and it's going to be hard to slow them down.
All right. When we come back after these messages, we're going to ask our panel to tell us something we don't know.
NC Spin is brought to you in part by the North Carolina Farm Bureau. The Farm Bureau and Agriculture. We keep North Carolina growing.
You trust your family physician to care for you and your family. We treasure that trust and are committed to providing the best care possible for all North Carolinians. It's time for Medicaid reform, but not without input from North Carolina's family physicians. Medicaid reform will impact health care for all of us. Tell state leaders you want your physician involved. We need Medicaid reform that's good for North Carolina. To sign our petition of support, visit rnchealthcare.com.
North Carolina is a great place to live, work, and raise a family, but we consistently rank in the bottom third for state health. Poor health choices and inactivity cost our state $54 billion a year, dollars that could be saved through healthier living. We can do better, North Carolina. That's why NC Spin is working with health and community organizations to launch a Healthier NC, an education campaign and challenge to live healthier lives. Join us at ahealthierNC.com.
We now return to NC Spin.
We constantly get comments from you, the viewer, telling us that your favorite part of the show is this one, in which we ask the panel to sound off and tell us something we don't know. They get to choose the topic and sound off on it for a few seconds. Joe Mavretic, I'll start with you.
When you sit down for your holiday dinners, please remember that the federal government has indebted everybody at the table for $53,000 worth of debt. So if you have 10 people around Thanksgiving dinner, that's a little over $500,000 worth of debt, and a third of that's owed to foreign governments.
That would almost make me choke on my collard greens. Chris, tell us something we don't know.
This past week, Senate President Pro Tem Phil Berger appointed Francis DeLuca, the head of the Civitas Institute, to the State Board of Ethics. He's not only the head of the Civitas Institute, he's the head of Civitas Action, which raises money and runs attack ads to help people get elected or defeated running for the General Assembly. Now Mr. DeLuca will be on a board where he'll be the first pass at deciding which ethics complaints against people running in the General Assembly will proceed and have access to confidential information. At the same time, he's running an organization that is trying to defeat people running for the General Assembly. It puts him in an impossible situation.
John, tell us something we don't know.
Tom, if possible, the politics of Obamacare are going to get worse for the president, not better. So far, the number of people enrolled in the exchange plans are disproportionately older and more expensive to treat. The economics of the exchanges have been knocked out of whack. The only way the insurers are not going to get killed is to get larger subsidies from government, which they have apparently been promised. That's going to be deeply unpopular.
Wow. Connie, tell us something we don't know.
For years, the Employment Security Commission in North Carolina was ranked one of the worst agencies of its kind in the country. And there have been some amazing turnarounds that are going there at that agency. Assistant Secretary Dale Falwell has done a great job trying to work with the inefficiencies, get people in the right places. And a recent report that agency had to the legislature was very positive. It's exciting to see things improving in that agency.
I saw him recently. He looked really tired.
That's working hard.
Well, you've heard our spin on the issues of the day. To stay informed all during the week, give your feedback and read our weekly column. Visit our website, ncspin.com, or catch NC Spin on Facebook. We hope you'll join us next week when we'll take on more issues of interest to the people of North Carolina. Until then, happy Thanksgiving, stay informed, and watch out for the spin.
Join us next week and get the spin on issues facing our state.